Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. Today's date is May 15, 2020. And this is another video about Bernie Sanders, his failed campaign, his failings within it, and how fucking screwed we are because the U.S. left has been in a lurch for decades. It really badly needed a shot in the arm. Bernie stood up to be that shot in the arm and then fucking screwed us. That is my position. I think that that's a sane and defensible position. But every time that I post about this, and I try not to do it more than once a week on the Facebook page, I get people coming out and, how dare you? And, how dare you criticize Bernie and all this stuff? Listen, it's over. It's been a month since he endorsed Biden, dropped out in the middle of an illegitimate pandemic primary without so much as a whimper about how completely rigged from top to bottom it was. He did it again, at least in 2016. He stayed in all the way. Okay. So we've got to get it through our heads that he didn't fight. His job was to fight. He didn't fight. He laid down halfway through. And I have a clip here that I posted recently on the Facebook page. The original clip here, it's between Chris Hedges and a German interviewer. And Chris Hedges is talking about his take on why, Bernie Sanders didn't do more effective things that he knew damn well would have been more effective. So let's listen to the clip and then I'll come back because I have a very specific argument to make about why the left now, from the center left to the far left, needs to look at what was going on with Bernie Sanders as maybe the most promising thing going on, and why shredding Bernie Sanders is vital moving forward. Let's listen.
I want to talk about the state of the left and break it down into two parts. Part number one is Bernie Sanders had an experience in 2016 when he was sidelined, which WikiLeaks revealed, by the shenanigans of the DNC. Instead, he went on knowing full well, and I talked to Glenn Greenwald about this, and he was very adamant about talking about this point, that he knew full well what the mainstream corporate billionaire media class would do, which you alluded to earlier in our interview. And he also knew how the establishment would attack him in 2020. And yet Bernie Sanders decided to try to influence change within the Democratic apparatus. How do you view Bernie Sanders? Is he part of parcel of some criticism as well, or should we just attribute it to external factors like the media and the DNC? So that's part one of the question.
So in 2016, I did an event with Bernie Sanders and Bill McKibben, Naomi Klein, and the Socialist City Councilwoman from Seattle, Shama Sawan. And Shama pushed Bernie before the event. I was there as to why he wouldn't run as an independent, arguing correctly that we were never going to build an effective political movement in an election cycle, and we were not going to build it within the confines of the Democratic Party. Sanders' answer was that he didn't want to become Ralph Nader. What did that mean? What does it mean? Nader ran for president several times. He actually did quite well in 2000, getting almost 5% of the vote. The Democratic Party had to destroy him. They were terrified. I was Nader's speechwriter. And they did. They turned him into a pariah. And that's what Sanders meant. He knew the Democratic Party machine would destroy him. They would mount an intensive campaign to deny him his Senate seat. That's, what they did to McGovern. People forget George McGovern, the last Democratic nominee to take on the military-industrial establishment. He took on the animal agriculture industry, and I would tell all your viewers to become vegan if they care about climate change, which is why I became vegan, and held hearings about the carcinogens and the danger of animal-based products as the mainstay of your diet, and they pushed him out of his Senate seat in South Dakota. So that Bernie knew what they would do, and he wasn't wrong. And so he, I think, naively believed that in the period between 2016 and 2020, he would be a loyal party member, which he was. He was endorsing all sorts of neoliberal Democratic candidates who espoused economic positions that he claims to be dead set against. And of course, after the nomination, when many of his people walked out of I was in Philadelphia with Cornel West. We were in a march with homeless people, several thousand homeless people surrounding the Democratic National Convention Center, appropriately named the Wells Fargo Center. And so Cornel said quite presciently to me, Bernie missed his historical moment. Bernie should have walked out, and he should have spent the intervening years building a third-party movement. Would he have succeeded? I mean, having worked with Ralph and seeing how dirty they play, probably not, but he would have been able to begin to build something. Instead, he became a tool of the Democratic Party, which, of course, on the eve of the South Carolina, was it South or North Carolina, primary under Barack Obama's direction, turned on him. He knew the dirty tricks, as you pointed out. The whole Democratic National Committee was fixed against him in 2016, and yet he said nothing. It was left to Donna Brazile, who had been to expose it. And I think it was political cowardice. And now, of course, he's telling his supporters to vote for Biden. And Bernie just wanted to be part of the club. I mean, one of the reasons Bernie didn't go after Biden on the campaign trail is because socially, especially his wife, Jane Sanders, they're friends with the Bidens. So, yeah, I think Bernie failed us. And we don't have any time left. I mean, because of climate change, things are deteriorating at a rate that even climate scientists never predicted. We can't fool around. Do we vote for Biden? Do we vote for Trump? Given the ecocide that is before us and the economic devastation that is, weeks and months away, these kinds of questions are kind of absurd.
Okay. That's the clip. I edited that down. If you saw some jumps, it's because I edited it. The clip I took that out of was about 15 minutes long, and I cut it down to like 4, I think. I hope that's clear. Okay, Bernie Sanders himself, there is footage of Bernie Sanders from the 90s saying that they need to build a rainbow coalition-like movement, and they need to do it outside the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders, of course, was an independent for a very long time, still technically is, but now fully acts like a Democrat. And then we have him doing exactly what Hedges just described. 2016, at least he stayed in the race all the way. He didn't even do that. That was his job. And since Sanders got out of the race, the media, Biden, the right-wing 1% Dems, they don't have to talk about Medicare for all. They don't have to talk about wealth inequality. They don't have to talk about it. Biden can hide in his basement because nobody's challenging him. Nobody is remotely holding his feet to the fire, even in the timid way that Bernie was doing, because Bernie's just out of the race without a peep. Illegitimate pandemic primary, and he is just laid down. I mean, they screwed us in 2016 as well. Bernie didn't say enough about that, but there was at least this sort of hope that, 2020, like there'd just be, such a battering ram, such momentum that we'd be unstoppable. Clearly not. But, in 2016, I was telling everybody I knew he should have endorsed Hillary and then said, we're sitting 2016 out, but we're, to not get nadered if that's what he wanted. We're sitting 2016 out, hold your nose and vote for Hillary, but we are coming for you in the midterms, and we start building our new Workers' Party today. Okay? That, I would have been happy. That would have been a winning strategy. We would have that party today. It would be major. It would be like the Tea Party and the effect that they had on the Republican Party and on the U.S. government in general. It would be huge. It would be massive. There would be a fight going on, and we in the far left would be able to radicalize many more people because that conversation would be going. We'd be going on the offense for once, starting to go on the offense. That would be major for the U.S. left. And yeah, there's a lot of social democrats in there and people who want to preserve capitalism, whatever. It's a coalition. We can drown those people out. But right now we got nothing. And we need something. Now, I'm not trying to, when I say we have nothing, I'm not trying to discount PSL or the Green Party, other organizations out there on the left who have been out there for decades doing the work. But you've got to admit, this was a breakthrough moment where it was going national. It was, kind of like Ron Paul for libertarians, where it went national, it became a household word. Everybody knew what it meant. Everybody was talking about it again. And, from there, we could have done a lot. Bernie laid down. So, all right, what's my strategic point in all of this? Because I'm trying to keep this video to about 10 minutes. Bernie told Sawant and Hedges that he didn't want to be Nadered. Basically, if you remember the 2000 election, Al Gore didn't even win his home state. The Supreme Court decided the election. The entire election was bullshit. I mean, it was super close, and then it was an illegitimate election anyway. But the Democrats still blamed Ralph Nader for losing. And as somebody I saw on Twitter mentioned, that feeling when the Democrats still haven't forgiven Ralph Nader for Bush, but they've forgiven Bush for being Bush. Like, it's just all such a con. And I've seen elections where the Democrats were the spoiler, where it was a Republican, an independent, and a Democrat. And the independent came way closer to winning, beating the Republican eventually won. The independent was closer, at local, state, and state stuff. And the Democrats never apologized for being the, quote, spoiler. But so it's all about stopping the left. It's all about stopping working people from building an alternative to their corporate-owned 1% money-laced system. That's what it's about. And Bernie Sanders decided to just play along with that shit. I think for reasons that Hedges summed up here. So 2 problems. 1, they fucking do it anyway. They still nader Bernie anyway. Hillary Clinton still blames Bernie for her fucking loss, even though she was a terrible candidate who offered absolutely nothing. She offered status quo at a time that the status quo is widely reviled. And then the other problem is, why was Bernie more afraid of the Democrats' rejection of him and smearing of him than he was afraid of ours? You ever stop to think about that? Why was he more afraid of what the Democrats would say about him than what his base and the left would say about him? And that's what I'm saying here. It's time to make these people, the AOCs and the Bernie and whoever comes after them, because there will be more, make them more afraid of us than they are of the Democrats. Does that make sense? Are you following my reasoning? Make them more ashamed of how we're going to treat them and the rejection we're going to give them than they are of the people in the club, the millionaires, the billionaires, the people who rule this fucking dystopian hellscape that we inhabit and that basically nobody who's working class can really escape from. Easily, anyway. So that's where we're at. Bernie Sanders ultimately cared more about what Joe Biden thought than he did about calling out the Democratic Party. And that's a fact. And if you can't accept that, just sit down and shut the fuck up, because you're just polluting discourse at this point. This has been Socialism for All. Thanks for listening. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/socialism for all, patreon.com/socialism for all. You can support us for as little as $1 a month. All of that's appreciated. I have a lot more videos in the hopper right now, and you'll be seeing a lot more in the next couple of weeks, thanks to our current patrons whose names are on the screen. Thank you.